livefreenow.show. And now your host, John Bush. You're listening to the Live Free Now podcast, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. Find us online at livefreenow.show. And now your host, John Bush.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Live Free Now show. Super excited to be bringing you an extra special guest today. We're going to be chatting with Mr. Curtis Stone. Let me know if you are tuned in on the YouTube room. Would love to see you light up the chats, and shout out, of course, to our friends that are tuning in via the Zoom room from our Live Free Academy Accelerator membership. Always a pleasure to be delivering some hard-hitting information for you guys. We're going to be joined by Curtis Stone today, the off-grid farmer. We're going to be talking about homesteading, family life, entrepreneurship, but we're going to spend a good time focused on maxims of equity and this whole law question, how people can achieve sovereignty through law, or at the very least, how we can be left alone. So hope everybody's doing well. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'll be monitoring the chat there on Zoom, and I'll also, of course, be monitoring the chat on good old YouTube, the YouTubes. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. We got a lot of ground to cover. Curtis should be joining us around 11:20 or so. And then we'll go for the remainder of the program here on the Live Free Now show. And then we'll do some after hours with our accelerator members where they can ask questions of Mr. Curtis and dive a little bit deeper. So yeah, this is the Live Free Now show. We're going to be doing the podcast, the video live stream every Wednesday. We're doing it at 11 a.m. right now, although we may switch the time up because, of course, our good friend Bradley Logan, the Trinity Law Method guy, he actually has a membership where, shout out to Karen from Arizona, in the accelerator member Zoom room. Bradley does a membership, and he does his at 12 on Wednesdays. And I'm part of his membership for the Trinity, of course. Hope you guys are familiar with what he's got going on. Of course, we hosted the Trinity Law Method Masterclass recently, and that masterclass dove deep into this structure that folks can leverage in order to create these free institutions in the private realm. It's a non-statutory trust, private membership association, and a 508c1a faith-based organization. And Rebecca and I, my lovely wife, we're actually building a fellowship that is going to help create a community, an intentional community here in Central Texas. And as soon as we learned about this Trinity method, it just clicked that this is the perfect structure to create what we're trying to create. We realized that we were trying to create these matrix. We're trying to create the new earth, right? We're trying to build a new earth, build new systems, freedom systems, agorist. And we were trying to do it using old school matrix style systems. And of course, it was like this friction that we were having, and we weren't able to wrap our head around how to mix it into 506B, 506C, whatever the heck. But whenever we learned about this Trinity method, really blew us away. Folks can actually access the replay. You can sign up for one of the replays of the webinar we did with Bradley over at livefree.academy/Trinity, livefree.academy/Trinity, and you'll be able to check that out for free, and really excited about that. I wanted to chat about something with you guys today before we have Mr. Curtis on, and we can get Curtis's insights on this as well, because I know we're on the same page when it comes to the political game. Maybe I'm a little more extreme, but we'll ask Curtis here shortly. But Of course, it's election season in the United States, and we got people coming in from all over the world, it seems. Lots of Canada folks, so I imagine old Curtis shared about this stream with his audience. Shout out to Stacy coming at us from Alberta, Edward from Ontario. We got some folks coming in from Oregon as well. Debbie coming in from Oregon, Lillian from British Columbia, and Ben from Denver, Colorado. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Again, John Bush here with the Live Free Now show. But yeah, I wanted to talk about politics and why I reject politics wholeheartedly and why I think it's important that people in our freedom community really have a vision, a mission, a purpose. Because when we have goals of our own, when we have our own vision, our own mission, it makes it easier to not get distracted and caught up in the rat race that is politics. I mean, it's just such a total shit show, really. Pardon my French. It's almost like a reality show, like with tons of drama and personalities and just clowns. It's like entertainment, really. That's why I pay attention. Of course, it does matter in like the slightest bit as far as how terrible government becomes, and it's like going to shift just slightly better or slightly worse. But in all reality, the tyranny and the technocracy especially marches on. And even though the policies vary slightly, when you look at the grand window of a political spectrum, where you have hardcore authoritarianism and tyranny on one end, and then you have total freedom on the other end, right? If you guys are looking, this would be your right. So, and this would be in my left, but really it's like left would be total freedom, right would be hardcore authoritarianism, not the traditional left-right paradigm, mind you. But either way, so you got hardcore authoritarianism, total freedom. The debate is like right here within this window. We're like not even exploring what life could be like if we had genuinely voluntary institutions that were decentralized, transparent, more about what people genuinely want out of life, not just supporting the oligarchs, the ruling class, and pitting people against one another. That certainly isn't serving anybody except those in power. So I just want to challenge people. If you follow my work, if you're part of this exit and build movement, exiting the system, building new systems, building community, exiting the city, building community in the country, exiting the banks, building alternative currency networks, right? If you're part of this exit and build movement, I want to encourage you to not get distracted by what's taking place in this teeny little weeny box. And instead, set your goals on creating greater freedom for yourself, but then take part in this animating contest of freedom that we've all been blessed to be born into. And let us drive the ball this way. You can't get caught in these debates, bing, 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 right here, or just get caught in the entertainment, drama, nonsense, sideshow, clown show. We got to keep pushing not only the Overton window, what's acceptable, rational dialogue with folks, but let's push action. Let's build these alternative systems. And when folks get caught up in politics, it's the lesser of two evils. It's slightly better or slightly worse government, depending on who you're asking. And in all reality, it's not really going to change things. To be honest, what I'm after is really changing the course of history, leaving a true legacy of liberty so that future generations don't have to spend so much of their time in a state of total friction, in a state of total reaction and resistance, and rather can focus on the finer things in life, art, philosophy, spending time with the family, not all stressed out all the time, innovation, because we're here playing defense. We don't have to play defense all the time. We know what they say, a good defense, best defense is a good offense. But if you're just caught pushing back in these policies and trying to get some clown elected because the other clown is less tolerable, we're not actually going to be on the offensive with our own plans, with our own path, charting our own course, folks. And that's what the exit and build thing really is all about. So I hope that you'll join us in this exit and build mission. There really is a lot to be done. And if you want to learn more about how you can take part in the exit and build movement, I want to invite you to sign up for our free daily email newsletter, livefree.academy/email. That's livefree.academy/email. We send out a daily email, and a lot of it has to do with tips and great personal stories. You'll get to know me quite a bit better. We do events. We do free webinars. We've done stuff with Curtis in the past. So definitely sign up over there. And of course, trying to grow this YouTube channel. We're going to be launching a Rumble channel as well. And a lot of our stuff is simulcast over on Odyssey. And we should be broadcasting to X right now. So shout out to our audience there on X, aka Twitter, aka Elon's little playground. Yeah, we're streaming there with just a small number of viewers. Most of the folks are tuned in there on YouTube. But yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can hit the bell icon in order to stay up to date with whenever we go live and get little announcements. And of course, you can subscribe to the channel and stay up to date with everything that we're doing over on the old YouTube. Again, that's livefree.academy/email, and then subscribe over on the channel there. I want to invite you guys to join me in the UK. We got a lot of folks coming in from Canada right now. A lot of folks popping all over the place. Debbie's asking, Anne Marie, you can't. Yeah, you guys network there in the chat. It's a great spot for people to be connected there. But I want to invite you guys out to check out this event that we got going on. It's called the People's Reset, the People's Reset UK. It's taking place in Bath, England. And it's the People's Reset. So this is an outgrowth of the Greater Reset activation, which was an event, a movement that Derek Bros and I spearheaded. There have been, this will be the 6th event, I believe. It's going down in the UK now, thanks to the help of Dan Aston Gregory, a tireless activist over there. September 27th through the 29th, coming up next month in Bath, England. You'll be able to hear from a whole slew of incredible speakers that will be absolutely blowing you away with the content. There's going to be live music. Myself, my lovely wife Rebecca will be there. There's all sorts of opportunity for networking and connecting with one another, getting to know people. Lots of business relationships have been forged. Lots of personal relationships have been forged. We're sponsoring my company, Live Free Academy. And it's put on by the Freedom Cell Network, freedomcells.org. That's an effort to connect people all across the globe. We got over 40,000 people participating, solutions-oriented folks that are working to create more freedom in their lives, individually and collectively. And the event is broken up into 5 different themes: liberty, liberate the mind, body, and soul; permaculture and food independence; agorism and parallel networks; empowering technology; and building free and conscious communities. The tickets are super affordable. Again, you could check that out at thegreaterreset.org, thegreaterreset.org. Like I said, my lovely wife and I will be there. So will be Ryan will be there, and other folks from our Live Free Academy community. I'm hoping to get to meet people there. So let me know, is there anybody in the UK that's tuned in right now? We got over 100 people that are tuned in on the live stream. We're going to be joined by Curtis here shortly. We'll do an interview with him. We'll be able to pick his brain, and then of course he'll be sticking around for after hours for our friends on the old Zoom room with the Live Free Academy Accelerator program. Do we have anybody in the UK? Let me know in the chat if you're tuned in from the UK. I know we got a lot of folks tuned in from old Canada. But the Greater Reset actually is this movement. This is an event called the People's Reset. It's part of the Greater Reset movement, and it's an effort to push back on the Great Reset. So if this is your first time checking out the Live Free Now show or following my work, again, my name's John Bush. You're tuned in to Live Free Now. Operate a company called Live Free Academy. We put on events, workshops, webinars, and really what we're trying to do is encourage people to take responsibility for creating greater freedom in their lives. This Greater Reset, People's Reset event and movement is just another example of the ethos that we're trying to embody. Of course, Curtis embodies it perfectly as well. What we're trying to do is encourage people to take action. And when it comes to the Great Reset, for example, it's a perfect example. The Great Reset is an effort by the World Economic Forum, which is a collection of oligarchs. Let me know in the chat. I'm sure you guys know exactly what the Great Reset is. My Live Free Academy Accelerator members over here, I know you guys know what it's all about. A lot of people in this movement are content just to research and share articles and try to, quote unquote, wake people up. In large part, that's like shoving a red pill down people's throat. But the Great Reset is an effort by the World Economic Forum to essentially usher in technocracy. Technocracy is an alternative form of government that was basically ruled by a scientific dictatorship. It's ruled by experts and algorithms, and that's what technocracy is. It looks like what's taking place in China with social credit scores, with surveillance, with biometrics, with these turnstiles that don't let you move forward or go through a particular zone unless you are approved, right? This is what the vaccine passport was all about. So that's what technocracy is, and this Great Reset effort is basically a marketing campaign to implement this and push this. Part of it's the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which would merge biology, technology, trackable wearable devices, smart cities. And so what we're trying to convey on this program, what we're trying to do with the Freedom Cell Network, the Greater Reset, People's Reset, Live Free Academy, is instead of people getting caught in this reactionary paradigm, whether it's the presidential election, parliamentary elections, whatever it may be, we're trying to get people to break free of that, to have sovereignty over your own attention, and to proactively and productively create the world we all desire. So in the case of the Great Reset, there's this ugly thing going on over here, just like there's an election going on over here with our example earlier. And a lot of people in the Freedom Truth movement, they're just focused on that, kind of worried about that, freaking out, oh my God, woe is me, look what they're doing. And what we're trying to do with the People's Reset, with the Freedom Cell Network, is create an alternative. So you got the Greater Reset, you got the Great Reset, we are creating the Greater Reset, or the People's Reset. What does that look like? They're trying to centralize power, we're trying to decentralize power. I shouldn't say trying, we are decentralizing power. They want to have these corrupt systems, we like transparent systems. They want to do everything in the public realm, we want to do it in the private realm, right? Actually kind of merging this public-private fascist type deal, actually, this like techno-fascism. So I just want to encourage people, be really choosy with what you put your attention to. Be really choosy with how you spend your time. And most importantly, focus on action, taking action in your life. And I tell you what, this is all mixed up into a wonderful philosophy for living the good life, because the less attention you give your enemy's plans, the less attention you give to the political crap show, the less attention you give to the Great Reset, living in fear, anxiety, and overwhelm, the more attention, brain power, life force you have to dedicate to building a life of your dreams, to taking responsibility for growing your own food, for raising your children, for using alternative currencies, for finding a freedom-loving community, whatever it may be. You see, but if we're spending all our time debating with people online, spending time stumping for people that we can't even hardly relate to just because they're better than the other guy, spend all our time knee-deep in research in the New World Order, then you're not going to have the time to really take responsibility. Not only that, Edward says, get out of the victim mentality and be proactive and empowered. Heck yeah, more power to you on that front. But not only that, but you can also, really, the more energy that you spend on all that stuff, sorry, I'm waiting to see if Curtis is going to be joining. All right, he'll be here in just one moment, folks. The more energy you spend on all that, the more attention you give, especially like these darker, more sinister, satanic agenda type stuff. Let's not live in naive about the fact that that's going on in the world. But the more attention that we give it, where our attention goes, energy flows. And of course, there's this law of attraction where it's like we are going to be focusing on all that. It's no wonder people are all bent out of shape and living in fear. It's no wonder people are freaked out. It's almost as though there's an element of this agenda that wants to get this freedom movement, this truth movement, all worried and overwhelmed and living in fear. Perfect example, we got the People's Reset coming up, like I was sharing about. The People's Reset, thegreaterreset.org is the website. If you're just joining us, we're just inviting folks to come take part in this event with us. There's a lot of people that are too afraid to even go to the event because it's in the UK, and you got all this crazy authoritarianism going on with the policies where people are getting in trouble for their posts and such. But it's like, you know what? Especially if you live in the UK, it's critical that you come to stuff like this because we got to provide an alternative. And it's not a pushback, fight the man, fight the system alternative. It's a build a better world. It's a live free, just live so damn free that the system craps its pants because there's absolutely nothing they could do to hold us back or to take away our freedom, because we just recognize how damn free we really already are. But there's people that are living in fear about that. In fact, there's people that are living in fear. They don't want to buy a piece of land. They don't want to buy a piece of property because they're worried the government's going to come take the property away. And I think about that a lot, being in the state of Texas, of course, because ain't nobody coming into the state of Texas. There's not going to be any blue helmets or United Nations troops that march into Texas and take the land of Texans. I mean, I think about my neighbor, for example. We're real close with our neighbors. I just went to dinner with them the other day. It's an older couple. They're retired. The guy's a veteran. He's a patriot. He's a Trump guy. In fact, funny story about our neighbors. This is why it's so good to get out of the country, because you could have the world's going to hell in the cities. They got technocracy, New World Order, smart city surveillance, right? But as I was saying that in my head, I'm like, you could actually live in the city and still be free, still live the good life if you're focused on your goals, if you have a tribe of freedom people, right? It's all about the mindset that you have and what you focus on. But in the country, not only are we more free because there's less government, there's less surveillance, there's less technocracy, but the people tend to be more individualistic, more supportive of one another. And our neighbor's a perfect example. We're walking the dogs in the backyard, and he comes up to us in his tractor, and he's like, hey, just checking on you guys. How you doing? Hey, you guys aren't taking that shot now, are you? You're not taking that shot, so we're not taking it, of course. It's the mark of the beast. We're not taking it for religious reasons. I thought that was really good and cool that he said that. But our neighbor's like, he's got, I don't want to reveal what he's got, but he's the type of guy, it would be glorious. It would be glory to be able to fight off the New World Order from taking his land, right? And that's all over Texas. Let me see Curtis here. Join me in the Zoom room. Ready to rock. Link above. Sorry, folks. Eventually here I'll have a producer that joins me, but right now I do all the producing myself and running everything myself as we're live. But we're going to pipe Curtis here into the Zoom room, and then we're going to stream him out to the YouTube audience for folks to join and participate. So as soon as he joins, he'll be hopping on here. But yeah, let's recognize that we got these limiting beliefs. Oftentimes we're living in a bit of fear. Oftentimes people are, fears false events appearing real. So the same thing. It's like, well, I don't want to buy land. The government will just take the land. I don't want to learn to use Bitcoin. I made some mistakes in the past and lost my Bitcoin, or I've never done well with technology. There's all these limiting beliefs that we have. These limiting beliefs are most definitely holding us back. It's up to each and every one of us to overcome these limiting beliefs, to push through. And more often than not, this fear that we have, these projections that we have, when you peel back a couple layers, you find in all reality, there's just some insecurity within ourselves. We don't want to feel silly or inadequate because we couldn't figure something out. We don't want to buy the homestead or start the garden because we don't want to have negative feelings within ourselves. We don't want to feel disappointed within ourselves if we destroy another crop. or if we never produce fruit on our corn plants, like myself. I've had many gardens on many different properties, and I still haven't managed to produce a ear of corn. In fact, I haven't tried in a while. Maybe I should take my own advice and give that a try. Our garden's doing well. It's hard here in Texas in the summer, but it's actually the most fruitful garden that we've had since we moved on our 10-acre homestead. We do have Mr. Curtis Stone, so I'm going to take a sec to get this all situated. Pretty soon here I'll be like, all right, we're going to have our guest here in just a sec, and then I'll play like a little 2-minute video while I get him set up. But for now, we're just going to rock it and roll it. So let's go ahead and add Mr. Curtis here. Curtis, you should, let me see if I can ask you to unmute yourself. Let's go ahead and pull up Curtis alongside me and see if everything works just fine here. Curtis, how are you?
Good, buddy. Sorry,
Good.
you think you emailed me a different Zoom link, and I was waiting in another room, and I was
No
waiting
way.
there for minutes, and I was gonna text you and say, hey, if you're gonna be more minutes, I'm gonna go feed my chickens because I haven't done that yet. My
Okay, no
wife's got it,
problem.
but no,
No
all good. We're
worries, no
here.
worries. Okay, good, good. I just added you, so I know the Zoom folks can hear you. Let me know on YouTube if you guys are able to hear Mr. Curtis there with the nice white background going on. Oh, are you in your shop or something?
Yeah. Well, my office is next to my shop. Yeah, you can see
Excellent.
my cabinets there in the background.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was a white background. Then I was like, oh, it's just a wall. And there he's got the cabinets. Nice.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear Curtis just fine in the YouTube audience? We got 120 people tuned in live. We got about 8 members that are joining us. More will probably come for our Q&A session. But before we start the interview, let me know there if you can hear. If they should be able to hear just fine. Yeah, they're excited. All right, let's go ahead and get right down to it. All right, Mr. Curtis, you're a pretty popular guy, and I've seen you draw a crowd at several events that I've been to or that I've watched online. But if there's folks in the audience that aren't familiar with you, maybe just give us a quick background. Who's Mr. Curtis Stone?
Hey, brother. Happy to be here, man. And yeah, I mean, what are we going to talk about today? You want me to give you the background? Is that what you're asking for, John?
Yeah, yeah. Just give me a quick intro. Who's Curtis?
Okay, yeah.
What's your work all about?
What's my work all about? It's about getting freedom. It's about getting freedom on the land. Very similar to what you're doing. My journey brought me here. I kind of realized a long time ago that a big way to get free, at least what was within my capacity at that time, was to control my food. And so getting free by not getting poisoned or getting less poisoned by the system, getting that, down, that led to many different things. Now I'm off grid, and I help people get to here, get off grid, show you how to navigate the matrix a little bit as well. Understand what it is. There's the world that is versus the world that ought to be. I think people that want to debate politics and argue about bullshit that the system is doing are arguing about the way the world ought to be, whereas I just look at the way the world is, and then what do we got to do to get free? What do we got to do to get those weakest links addressed so that you can situate yourself in a way that you're going to benefit from all this madness going on, and be prepared for what might be coming. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Excellent, excellent. So let's start with the homestead stuff. I definitely want to spend most of our time talking about law and this whole
Sure.
equity and maxims of law stuff, which you really turned me on to quite a bit. But first, the homestead. How's your homestead doing up in Canada? What do you got? Just give us a lowdown on what you've been building. Is that park that you're always showing off with like a pond? Is that on your property?
That's on my property. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
We're on
beautiful.
40. Yeah. We're on 40 acres. We live on a sort of a mountain ridge, but I've got some valleys and stuff. It's a fairly big property, so it's got quite a bit of variation with topography. Um, but yeah, we've got 38 acres of trees. So most of the property is a forest, but where we live is it was a clear cut actually. There's about 8 acres of clear cut. And that's where I have all my homestead infrastructure. We've got solar. I've got 3 greenhouses, about half-acre of gardens, various gardens, perennial and annual. I've got 2 ponds. Yeah, lots of green space that we can live in. We made a park on our property. It's 2 acres of forest around one of the ponds, and I've got a deck in there. It's like a little party zone. I'm gonna put a sauna in there. It's amazing. So yeah, we live on this awesome off-grid property that produces a lot of our own food, not all of it, but a lot of it, getting more every day. And yeah, we're solar powered entirely. Even charged the Model X. I know you've got one, John. We had a little bit of whiskey in that car last time I saw you. Not while we were driving, folks. It was actually an
Just
autopilot.
just a little bit of whiskey.
Yeah. No, we were parked. But yeah, I charged the car with that. We've got a diesel generator that powers us for maybe a month of the year, at the darkest, coldest time of the year. But other than that, we're all solar up here. That's kind of what the homestead looks like these days. The house, I'm building a house. I've done many things up here. I've many structures. First thing I built when I got on this property was we're off grid and wanted to be off grid. It would have cost me about the same to bring power in here, actually, just from our distance and topography off the power lines. We I built a garage and a greenhouse so that I could grow some food, but also have a place to house all the batteries and inverters and stuff for the solar system here. And so, yeah, we've got that going on, and yeah, we're just adding to it all the time. The house that we're building is a passive solar home. It's a 3,000 square foot, 1,500 square foot per level, passive solar. All the windows face south. It's bermed into the mountain. It's amazing. It's been a 3-year project though, so we're getting through there. Right now, we're actually doing finishing now. So we're painting inside and getting ready for cabinets and flooring and stuff like that. So it's exciting. We'll be living in the house this winter. But yeah, it's been a 3-year project, and there's still plenty to go. I'm still working on construction almost every day. I do all the machine work, all the landscaping, gardens and stuff like that, of course, homesteading stuff. I have trades guys that do all the carpentry, electricians and plumbing and all that kind of stuff. I do all the concrete and landscape work, and have help from time to time too. But yeah, it's been a 3-year project and still going. I think this is a significant step after this. By this winter, we'll be, living in the house, which is significant, but there's still at least another 1 to 2 years of work on this property to get to where I really want to be. And then that'll be cool. That'll be the 5-year mark, So you're looking for a benchmark of what it takes to really get a homestead to a point where you're as autonomous as you can be in terms of food, water, energy, and shelter. And yeah, that's kind of what you can expect if you were to really crank it. And this has pretty much been my full-time gig. I've been fortunate enough that in my career, I've been able to set things up with my companies and the way I've worked, that I've been able to, do fairly well for myself, that I can afford to spend the time and the money to do all this. Not everybody can do it right away. It might even take you 15, 20 years, but I've done it, and we'll have done it in 5. And yeah, it feels like a pretty cool accomplishment. It's cool place to be, especially in the times that we're in.
Yeah, so we have a 10-acre homestead, and we've been there for 3 years now. I think 3 years exactly, almost. And it does take a lot of time, but just the other day, we finally have 3 full-time community members that are living on the property. It's there's actually 8 adults, 5 children, 5 dogs, no, 4 dogs. We got like 8 chickens. We have 7 ducks now. But just me and Rebecca the past week have just been looking around. The garden's doing well, the livestock's doing well, and seeing all the people, we're just like, they're like chatting over here, a couple of circles over there. It just feels really rewarding, but it's a lot of work. And I tell you what, it wasn't always like that. And there's been a whole lot of ups and downs, especially with the damn garden. That's probably been the most challenging part. It's not easy when you got to deal with the elements and the damn caterpillars.
Well, that's just it. People think, people assume that warmer climates are just easier to grow in, and it's just not the case at all. Sure, some are better than others. The devil's in the details, as I say, but no, it's gardening where I am in southern British Columbia, Canada, is way easier than it is for you down in kind of central Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Let me ask you real quick before we get into the law stuff. I know that you work your kiddos into the mix there with the work you're doing, and you got a big picture kind of think about legacy and all that. Can you talk about how owning a homestead gives you the opportunity to really build those family bonds?
Sorry, John, it froze up on my end a bit there, and so if you asked me something, I didn't get it.
Oh, yeah, no worries. I was asking how having a homestead helps you to build family bonds with the children and leave a legacy when it comes to the land and everything that you're building.
Well, as far as the legacy, we'll see. You know, my kids are still young, so but that is the exact plan and hope. But no, I mean, I couldn't imagine now being here for as long as we have, despite all the challenges that comes with, living this ton of lifestyle. It's a whole bunch of responsibilities, essentially, along with those freedoms, of course. Is the family dynamic is amazing. I mean, my kids are so grounded, and it's what a blessing, Our kids just get up and are bare feet outside and in the sun in the morning and going and just grabbing stuff out of the garden, and they can walk around freely. We've fenced in 8 acres here too. So, and we have a really awesome livestock guardian dog. So we don't have to worry about, animal invaders, because that is a thing for us, like, maybe when you're living in downtown Dallas or some shitty burb of Dallas, Fort Worth, you got to worry about the urban invaders. But up here, we actually have legitimate threat with cougars and bears and stuff like that. So we have those threats, but our homestead is pretty secure for them. But we have that. Man, I have so many flies in here right now. It's driving me crazy. It's all from my greenhouse because I've got these grapes in the greenhouse. So if you see me swatting around, that's why. No, it's amazing. I mean, it's I couldn't imagine going back. We moved just like you. We moved during the COVID show, and we bought this place in 2020, September 2020, and officially moved full time. Sold our house in Kelowna September 2021, and came up here full time. But there had been a year where I'd been working on this project. I'd come up here, work for a week, go home for a week, kind of do that. Did that for a year. And when I think about the life that we left in Kelowna, especially during the time that the COVID thing was all starting, I can't imagine going back to living that way. And, you talk about exit and build. We exited and built. And man, I couldn't imagine living, because the world changed after the COVID scam. We all know that. Everybody in your follows you knows that and probably agrees with you. The world changed, and it's no longer the world it was. I used to be the guy about town, the man about town in my city of Kelowna, BC, that I was born and raised in, started my business on, became, internationally recognized while living there, traveling the US and the world at the same time. But I was a golden boy in that town. Everybody in my neighborhood knew me. Yeah, I had a bit of pushback when everybody got woke during 2016 and 2017. I wasn't, as you and I, have crossed paths on social media. We've seen each other do this, is that we didn't keep our mouth shut. And so I had a lot of people that, were a little bit alienated towards me, or I alienated myself towards then. But during COVID, I was just like, fuck this. I was calling all of it out. And so I watched my neighborhood go from an environment where, a fairly kind of suburban neighborhood, 4,000 square foot lots kind of thing. Our place was just pumping in gardens. Anybody who's watched my YouTube videos over the past had seen it. Had this wicked greenhouse in the backyard, abundant food, but abundant attitude. I always said to my neighbors, whatever you can reach, you can eat. Grab the grapes and raspberries and blackberries over the fence. Brought in that abundance in the community, which was amazing. And we had a great community connection to the people around us. But during the COVID show, I watched my neighbors being all friendly and loving, and Christmas cards over Christmas and that kind of stuff, to peeking out the fucking blinds to make sure my kids are wearing masks. And that was just where I said, no, we're done. And the world, even though the COVID thing is over, there's still that kind of 10 to 20% of true believers that are still in that cult, that are still wearing masks and just going along with everything that the state tells them, or the media industrial complex tells them. And I just don't want to be a part of that world. I'm just over it. And so I can't imagine, I went on a bit of a tangent, but you asked about parenting and all that. And I couldn't imagine not parenting this way now that we've been this way, especially during all that stuff. And now loving it and just appreciating that freedom. We can walk out, we could naked garden every day if we want to, like we have that privacy. We can do whatever we want. We live in a very rural area. We're not that far from the closest town though. Like it's 15 minutes to a town. So we have friends, we have community, but we have privacy and we have security, and that's to me worth so much.
Right on. Right on. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, folks, if you're just joining us, this is the Live Free Now show. We're bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. You can join us through the podcast feeds on Stitcher and Spotify, all that good stuff. Head over to livefreenow.show if you want to subscribe over there. Or, of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're working to grow the YouTube channel here. And also we're going to be on Odyssey as well, drop a little Rumble action. So definitely check that out. Again, you can subscribe to our channel or hit that bell notification. And of course, what's the latest website that you want to promote folks to check out here, Mr. Curtis?
Freedom Farmers.
A lot of different Freedom Farmers is the
freedomfarmers.com.
Freedomfarmers.com.
Cool. I think you probably have a link that you can share.
Yeah, we got a link in the show notes
there.
There,
affiliate there. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, I didn't use the affiliate, but that's okay. Just spread the love all through and through. So let's switch to law now, okay? So one thing that I always appreciated that you said, because we were doing a Meet the Experts thing, and I was pushing back, well, how much freedom can you have in Canada? You're in Trudeau's Canada. And you replied something to the effect like, I'm up here in the mountains. Nobody's even around me. Trudeau is completely irrelevant. So maybe you can kind of riff on that. And that's especially the case when you understand law. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways we can go with that. But, one thing is the fundamental understanding that Canada and every government is nothing but a corporation. And the matrix system that you live in is nothing but money. It's all about the money. And from there, where that money comes from is from us. And the way that and this is kind of econ 101 for some people, is that the way that governments borrow money, because as you know, everybody in the freedom community understands, say, the Federal Reserve Act and all that, 1913. But it's now commonplace that all governments borrow money to pay for infrastructure and projects, whereas in the past, and the US had a few different incarnations of it with the greenback and the different ways that they were trying to get themselves away from British bankers. Yeah, fundamentally, it all comes down to your birth certificate. When you were born, your mother signed the statement of live birth. And then from that, she took that to the Vital Statistics Agency, and whatever the name is for it in your country might vary, but they created a legal person. And that legal person is your all caps name. Usually it reads last, comma, first, and middle, usually. So sometimes there's variations of that with immigrants and stuff like that. But that is the thing that gets you into the matrix. So imagine that is your avatar into the matrix. So imagine a video game or the movie The Matrix, if you know the proverbial classic movie that we reference all the time in sort of pop culture references, is that gets you into the matrix. And so that gets you into the money world. Now, what you didn't learn in econ is that the way the government borrows money is through that legal person. It is a contractual obligation that was created by your mother. So that's the only one that you tacitly agreed to without any form of consent. But every other one you did agree to, at least tacitly. And you had the ability to correct the record. But these things sign you into all these obligations that regard money. And the way the governments make infinite money is they print money based on your future labor and obligations into those contracts. So not only are they making money off direct taxation through income tax and other forms of taxation, as well as that birth certificate being obligated to occupational licensing, contractual obligations such as driver's licenses, business obligations, corporate, you name it. Thousands of interactions and corporate obligations that your legal person goes through in a lifetime is massive. And the government borrows money based on that as an income producing asset. So they go to the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements, or the international, yeah, or what's another one? There might be a UN bank. Anyways, they go to these international banks and say, hey, we got all these slaves that are going to pay for all these things for the next 30 years. What will you lend us today based on that future promise? And that's essentially how the whole matrix works. Now, the thing that's amazing about it is that you have remedy in it because it's the fake world. Okay. So I'm going to grab a Bible here for a second. And another book. So there's sort of two worlds that we exist in. And in one world, you exist in the Bible. Okay, this is the Jerusalem Bible, and it's mostly the King James version of the Bible that exists in the courts today. But that's another Bible. It's an interesting Bible because it's the New Testament and Old Testament together. And they don't capitalize the word God or Lord or any of that, which is kind of interesting. But that's the real world of men and women as we understand it in the Western world, codified in Western law. And whether you're a Christian or not is irrelevant. It's a legal fact. Just like how in the Muslim world, the Quran is the codified word of God interpreted by law there.
I think Curtis, can you hear me still? You kind of froze up there. The truth bombs were just getting too serious.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
He's back. He's
cut
back.
Out. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. You were saying that in the Quran that is the interpreted.
That's right. So, and I'm just laying that out as evidence of fact that you can agree that the Bible is the codified word of God in the Western world and interpreted by the law. That's why it's in the court, right? So just trying to establish
the word is God, right?
The word is God, but the word of God is in its physical form sitting in the courts today, okay. Right? We understand that, okay? But another part of it is that there's also another world, and that's the world of the legal fiction. And that's the world where your fiction exists. This is the matrix. So this is the world of God, men, women, creative beings born with an infinite capacity to create. And then there's the world of the devil. And the devil administers the world all through the city of London, from the Vatican to the city of London. And this is the language of the devil, and it's the language of the matrix. And so the language of God is here, but the language of the matrix is here. This is called color of law. This is called law. You can go on the first page of the Jerusalem Bible, and it says the Hebrews referred to the Bible as the law. Mm-hmm. So that's the law. This is the color of law. You can go and look up the history of, you can even look it up in this dictionary, color of law. Color of law is the likeness of. The Bar Association and all the legal fictions are all considered the color of law. And so that's the paper world. The matrix is commercial paper. And so it's your paper against another guy's paper. It's the state's paper versus your corporation's paper, whatever it is. That's the matrix. And so the way out of the matrix is to not go out, is to get educated out and understand the big picture and then go back in. And so if you imagine that kind of classic scene in the Matrix, so there's a number of them, but the scene where Morpheus pulls Neo out of the Matrix and he's in his physical body, he's pulling out all the cables, right? Gets him on the ship, explains to him, you've been living in this fake world your entire life. Here's the real world. Here you are. And this is how it works. Now I'm going to take you into the Kung Fu simulator, and we're going to go and we're going to battle, and we're going to learn the rules of the matrix. We're going to understand gravity. We're going to understand the physical limitations of the game, so that now you can go and be a Kung Fu master and have unlimited gravity. You can fly, so on and so forth, right? But to get the remedy, he has to go back into the matrix. So Morpheus pulls him out, gives him the big picture, explains, in a way, metaphorically, what I just told you, that there is God, and then there's a world of man, and there's a world of legal fiction. And then we go back into the matrix to get the remedy and settle it there, because that's the rule. God made the rule that devil gets to administer the world, and you can fight and complain about that all you want. I don't like it. And we can all talk about natural law and how the world ought to be, But at the end of the day, it's how it is. And if you want to settle it and get to the heart of the issue, if you don't understand that main foundational piece of information there, you won't be able to get to the next level, because you have to foundationally understand these things. Otherwise, you're going to run into inconsistencies and moral and ethical dilemmas. Because you might think, well, don't I have to do everything the government tells me? Because isn't that the way we all pay our fair share and make this system the way it is? And the answer is no. These things are all it's all business. It's nothing personal. It's all business. And so the matrix system is through that money vessel, and everything has to be settled that way. That's why it's all charge, right? Everything's a charge. Or an order, from the government, and it's just like ordering pizza and chicken wings. It's like I got a half order of chicken wings here, an indictment, and then I got a half order of pizza, a bankruptcy, or whatever the charge could be. You name it. Just go through the definitions of charges in Black's Law and look at all the different ways they charge you. But it always the point is that it always comes down to money. And it all comes down to an agreement through a signature. And that's the golden goose of the matrix, is the signature. It's everything. And what you find when you really get into law, and especially on a statute level, you find that everything is endorsed by you. And so you're sitting here thinking, well, this agent of this agency says that I have to do this and this and this. But at the end of the day, they need your signature to get jurisdiction over you. And so what I've found that was a big later lesson in my journey of law, and like I've been, red pilled 25 years on this journey of law, at least 10, and really gone deep in the last 3 or 4 years, is that a lot of us thought that legal person, that entity, that avatar into the matrix, was the thing that made you bound to all contractual obligations, full stop. But it's not. And there are legal documents that actually give us remedy as the person. And so, yes, the person is a thing, like it's a real thing, and there is a big redemption at the end of that road if you want to chase that. And people do, and it's a big one. I typically don't. When I look at law and remedy, I just go right into the matrix, and I don't care about the legal person, because you can get remedy as the person. And if you look up a document like the ICCPR, that's the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it stipulates, it's Article 1 that says everyone has the right to their own economic and political self-determination. Full stop. So it's not persons only get this, or men and women only get this, or these people are these people. It's everyone. So that is a massive path to remedy there. Does that immediately give you a remedy for every jurisdiction or every agency you want to deal with? There you go. All peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Full stop. Boom. Right there. That is massive evidence that you can be self-determined. Now, what that looks like, well, it's like what I say. The devil's in the details, but God is in the fundamentals. So that's why I got so many damn sticky notes on this book, is that the words matter, and it's all words, because words that you thought you understood, you didn't. One example, a real good one, is the word includes. You thought, and I thought, we all thought, that if I said it's like inclusive, that means that everybody's included. No, inclusive means only those mentioned are included. So you go back to the Latin maxim. You can find all this in Black's Law. This is Black's Fifth, if anybody wants to look it up. I don't like flipping through definitions on a live call because it's not fast. But actually, did I put a sticky note on that one? I don't think I did. But Includes is the inclusion of one is the exclusion of everything else. That's what includes means. You thought it meant everybody was like, if I said, "Hey, I'm having a party on Friday, um, where dinner includes ice cream." You might assume that I said there's dinner and ice cream, but what I actually said legally is there's only ice cream. And so that's where once you start to understand the words, and that's why legalese is its own language, and that's why it has its own dictionary, is that once you understand the words and what they really mean, you're going to be like, holy shit. Words that you thought meant something did not mean what you thought, because what's spoken in Webster's dictionary or in common parlance is not what's in legalese. And that's the fundamental way they trick you into contractual obligations everywhere, because they think words like mandate mean that you have to oblige. But mandate specifically legally means that anybody involved in that particular agency. So if you're not in that agency, then you're not necessarily obligated to follow their mandate. That's their mandate, not yours. And so it's stuff like that, that
There's
really,
a lot to unpack there.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
I'm going to drop a little $5 Bitcoin Cash private key from bitcoin.com there in the YouTube chat. So anybody can redeem that. It'll be easiest if you have a bitcoin.com wallet. But you can also get the private key if you know how to do that. The first person to get it will attain it. The second person, it'll already be gone. So I just dropped that there just to thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to drop another one here for our membership audience as well. Okay, we normally go to the member audience here, but I'm going to keep the stream going. Members, if you have any questions, I enabled the Q&A function in Zoom. So ask your questions there in the Q&A function. Ask the questions in the Q&A function if you have those, and we're going to field those to Curtis. But I know my good friend Suzanne's up in Canada as well, and she is just dying to know about Curtis and how you've leveraged this, how you've leveraged remedy and equity in order to legally, lawfully opt out of these treacherous taxes. What does that look like for you up there in Canada?
Well, I'll tell you that, of all the questions to ask a guy who considers himself a legal cowboy, that's probably the one that I'm not going to tell you the details of in a public Zoom call. There's no fucking way in hell. But I will tell you that there is remedy. It's actually a lot easier than it is in the US, believe it or not. Canada's remedy for this is way easier than anywhere else I've seen it, and it's all good. And it's not about tax evasion. It's about absolute compliance. But as I said, the remedies are in the details. The devil's in the details. And so, yeah, it's possible to get out of most obligations within the state. There's some obligations I just care not to get out of, like the driver's license. I actually kind of agree with the driver's license, to be honest, because if the state wasn't managing it, somebody else would be. And it's not that bad of a thing, really. Is it bad? Yes, it's bad that cops are corrupt, but is it bad that there's speed limits on highways, that there's school zones where there's children walking around? Is it that bad? No. And if the state wasn't doing it, a free market would do it, and they might do it better. You could probably make a case for that. But there's some things that I just don't feel the need to get out of obligation for. Filing taxes. So the little kernel I'll give Suzanne is that the mandate of the Minister of Finance is to make sure all taxes for all Canadians are filed. Okay, so that's the important thing to understand there. And so it's important to stay in honor and agree, but the devil's in the details.
Okay, so what if somebody's already been agreeing to something, or somebody's already been filing regularly? Are there any maxims of equity that could reverse that? Does it have to do with understanding? Understand, I do not understand, right? Stand under.
Those kinds of definitions are fucking pointless to chase those rabbit holes of getting
like
into
the
that
gold
level
fringe
of
on the flag?
Yeah, all that shit, who cares? That's how I look at it. Who cares? It's esoteric things that don't get you anywhere. It's like, where's the stuff that gets you there? Well, for one, maxims of equity don't directly give you remedy, but they do guide you in, and these are your maxims of equity. If you go into blacks, actually, and I do have that one, I do have equity in blacks. If you go into blacks, if you have a copy of Black's Law Diction, I'd highly recommend everybody who wants to get into learning the law needs to get a copy of Black's. Fifth and sixth edition are really good and available, but there's a whole section on equity. And so, an example of equity is um, uh, equity suffers not a right without a remedy. So what they're really saying, and they give you some case law examples on this, is that if you follow it down, you can access equity in the statutes, and what it really means is that there is a remedy in every statute because statutes are color of law, not law. Thereby, they have to have ways out, and really, in a philosophical way, it comes down to free will, and that God promised man free will. And if we lose free will, then maybe that's the end of it. But we still have free will. We still have to consent to everything. During COVID, we did all that. But equity doesn't necessarily give you exact remedy. It gives you the framework to understand where the remedy might be, and also how it's spoken in the court. Like what equity really is, and it's a lot. Like go look up equity in blacks, and there's pages on it. But it's considered the spirit of law, and that you'll find that said in blacks. It's considered the spirit of law. It's the thrust of law. It was set up so that in the common law tradition, because there's three traditions of law in the Western world, in Canada and the US, it's common law, equity, and Roman civil law, statute law, is that common law in the old days was too rigid because all they had was previous cases to follow what would go next, but the new case was a bit different, and so they had to come up with a way that created base principles that could be applied logically in situations that were like infinitely complex. That was equity, but equity was around during this time when trust law was the law and everything was done through trusts, and it still is. At the highest levels, things are all through trusts, and statute law is underneath all of it. But equity is trust law, but it's also the framework of law. And so when you understand it, you can really start to, once you understand equity, all the main maxims of equity, and you understand the definitions, you can really start to see the path to remedy. And what it means in a broad way is that you can get out of most things if you unravel all the way back to how you got there in the first place. And what it is that you agreed to things, though it might have been a tacit agreement, which means that you didn't reply within 21 days or 7 days or whatever, and so then they accepted your agreement. Is that when you start to unravel, you go, okay, wait, look, I made a mistake here. I actually signed up for this thing and I wasn't aware of that. So now it's on me to correct the record and notice the mistake. And so equity is about accepting reality. Equity is not about controversy. It's not about getting into the judge, fuck you, fuck Trudeau, blah. It's not about that. It's accepting everything and rescinding or undoing things that had been done that you no longer want to do. But when you really look at it from a practical standpoint, there's actually a lot of services the state provides that I'm actually more than happy to sign up for. Even though, again, I'm an anarchist like you, but I'm an anarchist philosophically and more of a statist practically, because we don't have anarchy right now. So yeah, there's the way the world ought to be, and I'd love it to be, and that would be some sort of anarchist system based on natural law, sure. But that's not what we're in now. We're in the Matrix. We're in water world. And so when you're in water world, you better learn the rules quick. That's what Kevin Costner said in that movie. We're in water world now. You better learn the rules fast. That's how it is. It is. And it's a great movie about the Matrix. But that's the world we're in. So whether you like it or not, that's the devil's world. You had the legal person created. Now, if you don't start to accept and understand really what that means and what that obligates to you, you're going to be lost at sea. So if you don't want to be lost at sea, you better learn the rules, and then you can get at it. And it's like what I say to people. What I say to people all the time is that if you want to learn, if you want to live without rulers, right? And that's what an anarchist world looks like, is a world without rulers. It's not a world without rules. Is that if you want to live in a world without rulers, you better learn the rules. And that's the matrix. That is the statutory world that all comes out of equity we've arrived at through hundreds of years, thousands of years of common law. As a common law to equity to statute law, that's how it existed in time. And so, yeah, I kind of went on some tangents there, but I think that kind of paints the picture a little bit more of kind of where we're at and how we get out of it. Because like, if people want to ask me specific remedies, I will not do that on a public call. The reason for that is movie number 2 in the Matrix. At the end of that movie, and this goes into other stuff, personal situations mentors that I've studied with, but this scene in this movie illustrates this perfectly, is why we do not discuss remedy in public. Is that the big robot, Neo's out of the Matrix, now he's standing off with the big robot, and the robot's got all the tentacles. It's like all those images of the Rothschilds you've seen, how their tentacles get into the banks everywhere. It's kind of the same metaphor. Is that the robot says, look, you got here, you got all your powers, that's great. You can keep pulling people out of the Matrix like you are. That's totally fine. That's within your capacity to do that. That's your right. But if you go and wake up the sheep, we're going to smash Zion with all the force that you can see. So private remedies aren't for the public because the public isn't ready for them, and they actually won't benefit the average person at all. So there's no point of waking up the sheep and steering the boat off course. It's kind of like, imagine we're all on the Titanic, and the Titanic is a metaphor for the New World Order, the Anglo-American Zionist establishment, all that banking infrastructure that controls the media industrial complex, the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, all of it. We're on that boat, and that boat's sinking. It's a big boat, and it's going to take a while to sink. And the only way to get off that boat is to stand in single file and hope you get on a lifeboat. If you try to, because there's still people playing violins, they're singing songs, there's still people drunk in the bar, dancing, but you can see the ship is sinking. The only way you're getting off alive is single file, one at a time. And so there's no upside for me, society, the state, or any individual for blasting out remedies publicly, because most people aren't ready for them, and they require an incredible amount of nuanced explanation and careful insight as to how they're applied, because not every remedy is the same. And so that's what I would say to that, because people always want to ask, and it's like, well, that's valuable information, and it's dangerous as well. It's like giving a grenade to somebody who doesn't know that there's a switch, and that as soon as you pull this lever off, it's a countdown. And so I'm not going to give a grenade to an infant who doesn't understand basic physics.
I'm reminded Jesus Christ's disciples were like, why are you always speaking in parables? And he said, because the people don't understand the full message that I have to convey. I mean, arguably many of the disciples didn't understand it first, but he conveyed it over time. But okay, I feel you. I hear you. It definitely is. So
I know Suzanne's got a lot of questions, but sorry, Suzanne, that's not. We can talk big picture, and I can take you in all kinds of directions, but I can't give you any of these specific examples publicly.
Well, Suzanne's in Canada. I know you're doing those workshops and stuff. Do you want to?
Yeah.
What's the story there?
Suzanne, follow me on Telegram. That's the best way to stay up to date. I'm assuming if you follow John, you're probably on Telegram, because the whole, network you set up, John, was on Telegram. So follow me on Telegram, SHTF Farmer, t.me/SHTF Farmer. All caps for SHTF and then Farmer, lowercase. And then I'll tell about some of the workshops and stuff I do there. But yeah, I'm super careful with that stuff because the information's powerful. It doesn't serve most people. And Yeah, so that's kind of how I do that these days.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Yes, I see you put it up there.
Yeah. So, can you give some examples of some of the things that you? This is a question, but I think it's a kosher question from Suzanne here.
Yeah, it's well, not really, because she wants, um, yeah, no, she wants a specific example of remedy, and
No, something like a general area that you've. Can you give an example of something
oh,
that you've
okay,
unraveled and
oh,
then
yeah,
rescinded? Like
well,
specifically,
I
what
won't.
are some of the
Well,
things that you've?
the rescind is the remedy, so you're not getting that, Suzanne. But yeah, I mean, give you an example of things that you can unravel and where you find jurisdictional authority is, a lot of people in Canada right now are getting stop work orders, and the government or the municipality or the county is coming at them and saying, "Hey, you can't build XYZ without a permit." And you assumed that they had the authority to execute that power on you, though you didn't contract with them yet. But who you did contract with was the bank. And in your mortgage, if you have one, you'll most likely have an article, and it's different for every lending agreement because every bank has its own lending agreement. But you'll find an article in there that says that you agree to follow all the procedures regarding permits and things like that. And that so that is something that you're obligated to, and there's not much you can do about it unless you're ready to go get another mortgage. But that's the kind of thing that you find that when you start to unravel and look deeper into certain contractual or agent agreements that you thought you were obligated to, that actually go deeper and actually get you into the private in a way, because you had a private agreement with the bank. Not it's private in one way, but not entirely. It's still somewhat public because it uses the public name and all that. But that's the kind of thing where you'll go into and you'll be like, holy shit, I actually consented to this and I didn't know, because I didn't read that 30-page document that they gave me when I signed my mortgage. I didn't actually read the whole thing. And so that's where you'll find jurisdictional authority always comes down to the money every time. And if you chase it to its logical conclusion to the end, that's where you'll find it.
Right on. Good. What are some of, do you think, the most powerful maxims of equity that can aid folks in this process? Because I know there's a bunch of them.
Yeah,
I mean, can you explain again too? Like it's like the essence of the law. I was doing some research earlier today too, and it was talking about the genesis of it, how there was this chancellor that could push back on the king, and you had the common law courts, but every once in a while the common law courts would get it wrong. Who do you appeal to?
Yes.
You appeal to the king,
Yes.
but then sometimes the king would get it wrong, and it kind of originally it was original as arbitrary, but then it started morphing into precedent, and it's kind of like
which
an essence
well,
or an ethical deal.
Yes, well, it kind of started with kings, and then it went to precedent, and then equity made more precedent because it allowed judges to make decisions that weren't 100% based on precedent, which would have been common law, or the rigid structures of Roman statute law. It could kind of allow a bit more discrepancy, if you will, and that's where the courts of chancery came in. I love how you've done your research on this, John. It's great because when you understand the history of it, it actually makes a lot of fucking sense, and you start to go, oh my god. Because when I first started learning about equity, I didn't actually have the full picture of how it all worked historically. But actually, I will tell you that in the last year or so, I was taking a real estate licensors course so I could deal real estate in Canada or British Columbia. And the law course that it is included in is actually quite good. And especially when you want to understand property, because property is what it's all about. Like especially in equity, just like how you understand the term equity in, like, say, your home, you got equity in your home. Equity, it's the same thing, because equity is the heart of the matter, which is property. And that came out of traditional common law, but it's all about property. And so if it's a charge on you, even if it's an indictment, it's a charge against property. Now, what is that property? Well, it starts with a legal person. And then it goes beyond that, and that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, equity was just this way that the courts could make decisions. And there was a period of time where there was chancery courts and then there was courts of law. And so it was justice in the court of law and it was equity in the chancery courts. And so there was a period of time where there was separate courts. And you can go, this is all, you can Wikipedia this stuff. This is all like, this is not conspiracy theory. Like this is just all straight in the box history as we know it of law. And equity just gave, well, and then, okay, so then they consolidated the courts. And so now equity and law are both in the courts. And so the way to get equity is to only speak and be in equity, which that's a whole, I teach a 1.5 day workshop on all this stuff. And yeah, it's a whole other thing. But for the common individual who's interacting with the state, for the most part, you only need equity in some ways. Like where I learned a lot of this stuff was from guys that were going into the courts and going hardcore. Like they're trying to get guys out of a jail bond or a jail sentence or things like that, where it's really hardcore application. Most people aren't in the courts. Like I'm not in the courts. I don't need to go to court. I'm not fighting the system. And I'm not doing things that are getting me into a court because I just settle it all in the paperwork. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a reason to go to court. You certainly can. And that's where this stuff is more valuable than ever. But what I kind of teach people is like, I just call it practical remedy. It's just like, okay, what do I need to know to get the freedom? And I just think about freedom just like permaculture. What's the weakest link? What's the weakest link in the system to get you to where you're like 90%, optimized? Because we all live in this water world. Like there's nothing you can do about it. You're in water world. And so you can spend your life trying to unravel every single contractual obligation and rescinding it and doing all that kind of stuff. Or you can just look at what's practical today that's going to get me out of this thing, and this thing, so that I can more or less operate as a free, I don't use the word free man on the land is all BS. Don't follow that. Anything that says free man on the land or common law, stay away from that. But what can get you, the path of least resistance in your basic existence.
Yeah, and that's why. So we were at the Confluence event, and there was a younger guy, and it's always with the younger folks. I'm just starting to get into this law thing, or actually, I'm starting to take it seriously. I just wrote it off before because there was a lot of free man on the land, mumbo jumbo, and there's a lot of hocus pocus, BS charlatan stuff out there as well. And it's like, my guru's right, your guru's a fraud. No, this guy's right, and I just avoided it like the plague. But this whole the PMA thing really spoke to me because it seemed like a practical bridge. Like if you're going to set up an LLC, why the hell not just set up a PMA?
Well, I'll tell you why.
Yeah, you have some criticisms on it. What do you got?
Well, it's not that I have criticisms. I understand it. I get it. I had tons of my consulting clients are in this exact situation. Is that the PMA world, the private members association world, is in a way, it's it's how the world ought to be versus how the world is. So in the PMA world, it's like, yeah, let's get everybody in the private. Let's get everybody into this other contract in the private where you're coming in as a man and you're waiving liability and all that stuff. Okay, that's all great. But for most people's businesses, you can't convert 100% of your customers to do that. For most people, some businesses you can. You might be one of them. But for most people, you can't. You're still going to deal with the commercial world because you're using commercial paper. People like RMTs and naturopaths and alternative doctors and stuff like that all deal with that because their biggest challenge is that people can get their medical bills paid by a state or insurance policy. Thereby, those insurance policies only pay out when people are complying and working within the matrix. You throw a PMA into the mix, then all of a sudden that money is no good. And so that's where PMAs don't help those types of situations specifically. But yeah, I think the PMA is a great start. There's lots of people that teach PMAs, but yeah, it's not an application that's going to help most people. What a little red pill for the Canadians up here is that when you thought it was the world of public versus private in that you thought it was your company or your personal capacity in the public or private that got you the remedy. What it actually is, and I won't say much past this, is that it's the money. The money is whether the money is public or private, and you do it, well, in the details.
You broke up there. Can you throw that last sentence back?
Just that you thought it was the money, you thought it was you being in the public or the private. This is a Canadian thing. But what it actually is it's the money in the public or the private. And so that's another devil in the details kind of thing. But that's where direct understanding of how this stuff is the thing that's going to get you there.
Right on. Yeah, and I'm with you on the PMA thing, and that was actually the first question I asked. There was this panel on law at Confluence with old Brandon Joe Williams.
Yeah, me, yeah. That was amazing.
Quite the hoot, and Andrew Kaufman, Curtis, and it was emceed by Alec, who has all sorts of info on in this space in his own right. And I was asking the same thing, like it's the ought is fallacy. Just because that's the way things ought to be, this is my interpretation of the law, and I'm in the private realm, and we did this, and we didn't opt into that. That doesn't mean that's the way things are. It doesn't mean the government is going to agree with you, and they got all the guns and all this, that, and the other.
Well, but again, the devil's in the details. It will if you get all the customers that would be affected by that regulatory agency into that. Yes, it will, and the government will respect that. They have to. But the problem is where's your money coming from, and is it practical to do that? It might not be.
Well, I mean, nowadays, one thing I've noticed is this is the same thing whenever I would encourage businesses to start accepting Bitcoin. I would tell them, there's so many fanatics about Bitcoin right now, fans, right? If you market that you're accepting Bitcoin, you're going to get new business because they want to show you love. Just the same, if you're like, we're a PMA within this crazy community of freedom freaks, they're going to flock to that. So in one sense, It may actually be an asset, not a liability, you know? Going out into the real world, that's why it's important to coalesce with other freedom people, because we get it. And if you can build a business that caters to freedom people, as you've done, as I've done, then that's really where the magic's at.
Oh, dude, I'm a total believer in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin, in and of itself. I mean, I'm not really into other cryptos, to be honest. I mean, a little bit, but Monero and maybe a couple other minor ones. But yeah, Bitcoin is the solution. I mean, it is a solution. It's not the solution, but it's a solution because, as I say in the Matrix, where the money flows, the policy goes. So if that money is not created by a state agency, where's the policy? It's you and me. We get to decide. So that's right now, I'll give your audience a little bit of maybe some of the Canadians where I think there's a huge opportunity right now up here in Canada. There's a massive opportunity right now to get out of real estate and get into Bitcoin, and then get back into real estate in the next couple of years. Because we are in a real estate conundrum. A lot of my clients are doing this exactly right now because real estate's overvalued. It's a buyer's market now, big time, but it's still way overvalued as to what it should be. And interest rates are like 4.8. You go to a bank today, you might get 4.8, maybe a little lower, somewhere around there. That's more than double than it was 5 years ago. And in Canada, we get these, you thought a mortgage was a scam in the US? Well, the mortgage in Canada is more of a scam because you sign up for a 30-year mortgage, but you have to renew and update the interest rate every 5 years. Wow. So every 5 years, there's an attempt the bank can take to bankrupt you. Because if their interest rates go too high and you can't make the payments, and you have been doing renovations and improvements on your property for the last 10 years, they're going to take your home. And so they get to renegotiate the interest rate at today's rates, but on the valuation from when you bought it. So it's like the ultimate scam, but with it comes a huge opportunity. Is that in 2019, the highest amount of homeowner mortgages were signed over in Canadian history, meaning that it was 68.9%, you can Google this, 68.9% of real estate transactions in Canada in 2019 were homeowner purchases. So a boatload of people bought homes at the lowest 40-year interest rate cycle, and at the highest of the valuation cycle. Now the interest rates are coming down and the valuations are going up, or the valuations are going down and the interest rates going up. What happens? Well, you cross the streams, and if you cross the streams like in Ghostbusters, not a good scenario. A lot of people are going to lose their homes. And so right now is a great time to get out of the market, get into Bitcoin, which, as you and I both know, is probably going to double in the next year or two, and then get back in at a depreciated real estate. You could sell your home and maybe buy it back for a quarter of the price based on if you appreciate in Bitcoin over the next 2 years, you double your money, but then real estate values go down 50%. Boom. You come back in like a bandit. And then if you can own in Canada, I'll give you another little kernel of remedy. In Canada, if you can own your property without a mortgage, you can do way more on your property because you don't have that agreement that I mentioned earlier that's in your mortgage agreement that says you are going to agree to every single policy from the municipality or the county. You get out of that. So that's a big deal.
Right on. We had you slated till 12:30. Can you go a little bit over? I want to honor your time. There's still a couple more questions here. Okay, good.
All good, brother.
Good. Yeah, and folks, if you're just joining us, I want to invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. So we got 152 peeps watching live, so shout out there. I'm actually trying to fire off this little animation I have that has a little subscribe thing. I was all excited about that, but now it's not working. So anyway, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see that we got some questions coming in there on the YouTubes. So let's hit one here. Richard Rutledge is asking, does a government mandate not include those outside of the matrix, e.g. World Health mandated vaccinations? And then he also is asking, how do we exit from new World Health Organization efforts to supersede national governments? And let me just hit that one real quick. A lot of the stuff that the World Health Organization is doing, if you build your life in a way where you're out in the country, you're not dealing with public health, you got your own crew and your own source of income, of food and whatnot. The World Health Organization is almost completely irrelevant to me and my family and my community. Are you on the same page with that?
100%. This is truth or rabbit hole bullshit that wants to just keep you in a downward spiral of worrying about the next piece of paper that they sign. The thing that you got to understand in law is two things. There's jurisdictional authority through jurisdictional level of international, national. So international level, we have treaties and covenants, and then at federal level, we have bills, acts, and such like that. Then you go state, provincial, then you go municipal, so on and so forth. In law, if you can find a thing that gets you a remedy above a jurisdiction, a municipality's coming at you, but you find that law is repugnant to a, say, charter or constitution or thing like that, it can potentially give you a remedy. Another way that you get jurisdictional remedy in law is through time. This is why they never get rid of pieces of paper. You ever wondered why they just never get rid of the act? They set up this act 30 years ago. It's a bunch of bullshit. It's not relevant anymore. All it does is stifle human productivity. Why don't they just get rid of it? They can't, because in law, everything stays in time. And so whatever the WHO agrees on today, the ICCPR and the UNHR give me remedy. So the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the UN Human Rights, or the UN Charter on Human Rights gives you a remedy. They cannot force inject you, period. The only way they can is if you were commercially involved in an obligation with them. So you're a practicing nurse who has a license and you want to be in that matrix. Yes, you're going to have to follow everything the WHO says to you. If you're going to stay in the matrix, you're going to be prepared to go the whole way. But what people need to realize is that you can unravel all these things. So don't worry about any of the latest piece of paper they signed. Your remedy is in time. For example, in Canada here, during the trucker convoy, when they pulled out the Emergencies Act and said, okay, now we can violate your rights under the Emergencies Act, they were proven wrong in the superior courts. it was either the court of I don't know if it went to the Court of Appeals, but it did go to the Supreme Court, and it was thrown out because the judge said the charter has precedence over the Emergencies Act. Go look it up. That's not the exact verbatim verbiage, but go look it up. It was given precedent. And so that won over time. The charter stood in time. So the Emergencies Act was subject to the charter. It's the same thing with every new bill they create. That's why people send me stuff all the time. Oh, Curtis, they're going to put Bill C-598 through the House of Commons. Have you read this? No, I don't care. I got my remedy in the charter. I got my remedy in the charter. I got my remedy in the ICCPR, and I'm willing to go all the way in law and equity to challenge anybody's authority over that. But what that involves is a bit of understanding what you're getting into. And so, but I'm confident that nothing they can do is going to change that remedy for us. They're just hoping that you don't know. And the only equitable rights you can exercise are the ones that you understand. You cannot get equitable rights that you don't know because they don't exist to you. So the entire matrix works on ignorance. And all they care about is getting the 90% of people that are just willing to go along, get along, and they'll just repeat whatever they say, and they're not going to care about us. And people always say, oh, Curtis, they're going to round you and John up. They're going to round you guys up. You're not going to get out of the matrix. It's like, okay, you show me where they said they're going to do that. I read their documents. I read their white papers. Nowhere has anybody ever produced to me a UN doc, you name it, anything in writing that said they're going to round up people in the countryside who don't want to go along with everything they're going to do. They don't say that. What they do say is they're going to cut off resources. They're going to start making it harder to live off grid, no question about it. But if you're going to be off grid, you better be prepared to buck up and live in a new world of responsibility on the legal and the personal side, because that's how it is. You're going to live off grid, be prepared to chop some firewood, be prepared to grow some food. You want to get remedy in the matrix, be prepared to start reading Black's Law Dictionary, be prepared to start understanding equity, be prepared to read the mandate that they're throwing at your doorstep, be prepared to write a response to the letter that you got. It's a world of responsibility, and most people don't want it. So my belief, and this is a bit of theory, but my belief is that the New World Order doesn't care about us. They're going to let all of us go. They just want the 90% that are going to fund their evil satanic operation, and they don't care about the rest of us.
Well, if our voices get big enough and we're breaking people out of the matrix, like you said, with the robots staring us down, I think that's one of the only things that they would care about. And the beauty of the exit and build thing is like, we're not trying to engage the system. We're not storming the Capitol. We're not trying to run a candidate or resist what they're doing. We're just trying to live free. We're trying to be left alone. Right.
And John,
but we're also broadcasting to people like, hey, opt out, walk away. Let's do this over here. That would be the only threat to their deal.
Well, that's why I only go so far in the public. So what you said is absolutely correct, and I 100% agree. And I'll add something to it that might bring a higher level of understanding to this. Is there's a dichotomy here of approach. There's winning, okay, which is revolution. There's being right, which is revolution, proving the system's bullshit, proving it's fraud. January 6th, trucker convoy, blah, blah, blah. F Trudeau, F Biden, you name it. That's being right. Then there's winning, which is winning your stuff by getting your freedom, not taking anything away from the matrix and walking away quietly. So I want to win. I don't care about being right. When you want to be right, you want to get out there in the public. And this is why you'll see my behavior on social media is different than it was maybe 10 years ago when I think we started interacting on Facebook. Jack Spearco and all of us are arguing, blah, this is how it ought to be. I was like, I don't fucking care. You guys go ahead and be right all you want. I'm going to take what's mine and I'm going to walk away quietly. Thank you very much. I'll see you on this side when you're ready. And so I don't care about that at that moment. That moment might come eventually, when the masses wake up. I'm not banking on it. I think most people will die, frankly. And I'm apocalyptically optimistic about that. Because I look at that in a spiritual sense. Like for me, it all just comes down to my capacity as as an infinite ball of light, being part of the creator and all that, And so that's their path. Those people were born into that body. and they were born to learn some lessons and pay some consequences, and we all pay them in one way or another, and death is just part of life, you know. I kind of believe that we come in and out. Like I'm not a Christian. I use the Bible. I reference the Bible. I know that in law it's everything, but I don't. I think we have, you know, I'm a bit more hippie in terms of my spirituality, in the sense that I think we all have a purpose to fulfill, and that's to bring lessons back to creation and make everything better as we go through. And so all these people that took the shot that want to go along with the New World Order and they're down at the DNC right now, that's fine. You go do
Yeah.
that. You live out your purpose that way. I'm going to be over here. I don't care about the numbers, because the numbers aren't even that great anyways. We saw during COVID, you know, it's quality over quantity. The relationships all of us built up during COVID are some of the best relationships, or were at least the most revealing. And that you thought some people who are really awake turned out to be kind of annoying. And you thought, well, just because they're awake, they're going to be my best friend. It's like, well, not necessarily. It's not that simple. But we all have lessons. And so I don't care about waking people up. I don't care about the election in the United States. I don't care about the election in Canada. The New World Order is going to do its thing, and I'm going to do my thing, because I know I have the full legal and lawful capacity to do so. And yeah, I'm just living it.
Come on. All right, folks, subscribe to the YouTube channel. There, it played now, finally. For those of you that are joining us, we're going to be wrapping up here soon. There's just a couple more questions, and I just wanted to echo on that. I think a lot of that whole rah-rah, chest-beating kind of vibe has a lot to do with ego, and it's like,
Yes.
I got to be right, I got to push back, and then there's also a desire for justice. Now, unless your family member was personally affected, or maybe you lost your business or whatever, you know, it's just a projection. It's like justice on behalf of someone else, like a lot of the woke, you know, white knighting for the black community, for example. I can see why someone would desire justice, but then, you know, the Christian church, of course, has really, in large part, polluted the message of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ was one of the ultimate hippies, right? And something that really stuck out for me was like, literally, as he's being murdered on the cross, and the Romans just got done torturing him not too long ago, like really hardcore. If you read what they were doing, I think it's called
brutal.
flagellation or
I
whatever.
tried
It's
reading
like,
the Bible to my daughter once, and she just started crying immediately. It's like, maybe later.
But, you know, Jesus was like, forgive him, my Lord, for they know not what they do, right? And so there's this letting go of all of that desire for justice and to correct this and that, and just going and being free. And ultimately, that's the ultimate justice, when they no longer have any power over us whatsoever.
Absolutely. This is this why the Bible is everything. When you get into law, is now you've arrived at the dichotomy of justice versus equity. Justice is being right, proving you're being right. Equity is winning and just walking away and standing in honor. Because in the devil's world, okay, so there's another dichotomy. And I love these dichotomies because they help illustrate what the matrix really is in the devil's world, you're either in honor or you're in dishonor. In God's world, you're either right or wrong. So there's the dichotomy. You're either right or wrong here, or you're in honor or dishonor. If you want the most amount of freedom, you need to be in honor, but you also need to be right with God. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they have to be congruent. This is the thing. All these common law free men on the land guys are going, okay, I'm right with God. And they go into the courts and they're throwing Bible verses and all this stuff. But then they're in dishonor because they're not accepting the charge. And so to be dishonor is to not accept. But go look up the word accept in Black's Law Dictionary, and I bet you it didn't mean exactly what you thought it did. And so what it comes down to is you got to be in honor. And if you're not going to be in honor, that's not going to be a good day for you in the court.
Right on. Right on, right on. Good stuff. Okay, let's hit this last question here from one of our accelerator members, Miss Karen, from the Zoom room. Karen says, I agree. The more people who join this movement and stop complying, the greater the probability that we can bring it all crashing down. I've heard different people say that it'll only take 2% That's how many people participate in the American
Yeah,
Revolution, apparently. To join these movements to make a detrimental impact. Do you agree?
yeah, maybe. I mean, it's all speculation. So at the end of the day, what's it worth? It's another the world ought to be versus the way the world is. So, yeah,
Or like, let's
it could
find
be.
out. Let's find out if
Yeah, let's.
2% is enough.
You know what though, John? The more I see the way the New World Order is pushing us, though, the more I don't want that because they want more than ever to be a civil war. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Yeah, they're stoking
And
it.
so I don't want that. So I'm willing to go the long haul. I know that we're all antsy now coming out of the COVID show, and it's like, okay, they really ramped it up. Let's finish this. Let's get this to its logical conclusion. And a lot of and people on both sides, people on the left believing all the woke nonsense, or people on the right who believe all the other woke nonsense of Trump and all the BS that I think goes along with that, it buying into the whole Israel narrative and all that stuff. That's I like what Candace Owens calls it, the woke right. But doesn't matter where you are, is what the state wants is you spinning wheels. So whether you're on social media raging on about anything that's like near right-wing politics, and I would consider freedom stuff there. It's not bad nor good. It's just the way it is. Or you're on the left, screaming for more transgender money for transgender surgery. They just want you spinning your hamster wheel, not really get anywhere. That is objective number one. So whatever rhetoric you espouse that gets you there, they don't care. And ultimately, a civil war for them at this point, for the New World Order, I mean, Anglo-American establishment, is the best logical way for them to keep the whole show going because too many people are waking up. And so they want to derail those people because if you read Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley, that's what they talk about and how they divert you from the truth is they get you just 10% off. So you might believe 90% of your worldview might be bang on correct, but you're just missing the last little thing. And a big chunk of that last little thing is you are the driver of your own ship. You are the manifester of your destiny. You are the chosen one. You need to step up and make shit happen. And they want to get you to not believe that and believe that you're just a cog in a wheel, that you're just some fart in the wind in the cosmos of time that has insignificant consequence. But that's not how it is. And so that's what you got to understand. And then you can manifest and realize you were the one you're waiting for. God the whole time said, hey, it's all here waiting for you to step up and take, but it requires a lot of responsibility and hard work. And if you're willing to do that, you'll get there.
Come on. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. I think that's a great thing to end on. Freedomfarmers.com is the website, freedomfarmers.com. And then we shared the Telegram link earlier as well in the YouTubes and on old Zoom. I'll drop those one more time if you want to follow Mr. Curtis on Telegram.
You can follow me on X too, at offgridstone.
At offgridstone. Let's drop that in there as well. All right, you got any events or anything coming up? I know. Are you doing more workshops?
Yeah, I'm doing more law workshops. They can go and check that out on Telegram. And no, I've had a busy summer though. I was down in Missouri. I was down in Texas. We hung out. Hope to be down there with you next year as well. And yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, I don't know if you've announced that, so I don't want to say anything there. But
well,
yeah,
we'll share now for folks that actually tune in to the Live Free Now show. Curtis is going to be joining us as a headlining speaker at Polyface Farms, where we're doing Exit and Build number 5. So we're really excited to have Curtis and Joel. That's going to be one heck of an event, and we hope
Joel Salatin has been, for me. He's been probably my number one guy for many years. And that even includes in the law, because a lot of what Salatin knows more about the law than he might make people think.
Yeah.
But Salatin knows what's up, man. That guy is small. He is a smart dude. I've had many kind of backroom conversations with him in the old days when I was touring my book at the Mother Earth News fairs and stuff. And he knows a lot of stuff, that guy. And what a contributor to just freedom space in general. but also the regenerative ag, permaculture, even market gardening. Joel Salatin has been the guy. The guy is his gift to the world is far and beyond what he's ever done monetarily, and I think even more what he can even understand. His to have exit and build at Polyface Farms, I think, is an amazing thing, and I'm really looking forward to being there with you, brother.
Yeah, he embodies the whole exit and build thing. He's an absolute legend. You know, we did a private Live Free Academy member dinner with him after the last land summit, and we ate at this Mexican restaurant and then just sat on the back porch for like 2.5 hours, 2 hours, just mixing it up with Joel. It was awesome. And one of the things that came up with what you said just a second ago is somebody asked him about PMAs. And he's like, yeah, you know, we just hosted a debate between a couple PMA gurus at one of our last events at Polyface. And the funny thing is they could agree on nothing, you know? Yeah, they didn't agree on anything. And someone's like, why don't you do a PMA, Joel? Well, that just goes to the gurus who think they got it all, and these guys are right and wrong. And he's like, you know what? We don't need to do a PMA. You know, for one thing, I got 40 employees I want to take care of. I don't want to screw anything up. But he's like, we already have a good relationship with the county, and when they give us grief, we push back. Perhaps, you know, with remedy or leveraging maxims of equity. He just knows all that. And whether he knows it or studied it or has the book or whatever, he just intuitively knows how to push back.
He does.
This doesn't apply to me. This,
yes.
Whatever, you know?
And Joel's old school. So he has more of an old school understanding of, I actually find that when it comes to understanding law, and I've never, to be clear, I've never had any conversations about equity and stuff like that with Joel.
Sure.
But like as far as like legal remedy, but he does have an understanding of applied law. One, because he's lived in a highly regulated industry for a long time and worked within it. But he's also old school, and Joel's in that generation of people that remember American history prior to TikTok and YouTube and all that shit. And so those people, I find, generally speaking, have an easier time getting their head around some of this stuff and applying it. Because there's less to unwind. There's less propaganda. And that's one thing for you and me, we're around the same age, is like we're the last generation to live without the internet. I was 18 when the internet came around. So I was already mostly a developed adult in my mind and body before smartphones and all of that shit. Whereas now everybody's born with this stuff. And so there's a lot of wisdom that comes out of the older generations that I hope people continue to appreciate and look to people like Joel, because there's a lot of perspective you just don't have.
Right on. Good stuff, man. All right, well, we're looking forward to hanging out there in Virginia. I'm sure we'll run into each other before then, but it's always always a pleasure there, Mr. Curtis. Appreciate all the hard work and all the education. Thank you.
Yeah, brother. My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Live Free Now Show. You can follow the podcast, livefreenowshow.com. If you're watching on YouTube still, those of you that hung around, we hung out for quite some time, so this was great. You can subscribe to the podcast. Just click the little subscribe button down there on our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell notification as well if you want to know when we are going live. You can find me on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. It's at John B. Live Free, at John B. Live Free. And of course, the best way to stay in touch with us is over at our daily email newsletter. You can sign up at livefree.academy/email. That's livefree.academy/email. It's absolutely free. If you like what I have to say, if you want to hear what we're doing next, we do tons of free webinars. We just did one, in fact, on the Trinity framework, leveraging a PMA, a non-statutory trust, and creating a 508c1a faith-based organization. You can actually still get that access to the replay. You sign up for something in a few days. There's multiple different viewing opportunities. livefree.academy/Trinity for that. livefree.academy/Trinity. And finally, if you want to join Live Free Academy Accelerator membership, do awesome stuff like hanging out, mixing it up with Joel Salatin, you get to watch each one of our Live Free Now shows from a Zoom room. You get priority questions. Most of the time, we're going to take some private time with our guest in order to pick their brain and ask questions. You can sign up for the waiting list for our membership, livefreemembership.com. That's livefreemembership.com. livefree.com. And we'd love to have you part of everything we're doing here at Live Free Academy. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end the stream. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. It's been real.